Hello Stellar people and welcome back to the channel. My name is Trey and it is inking season week 4 where we will be doing Lore of the Silverhand, testing out our tools and techniques in inks. So let's get started. Alright, so now we are in the final week of Lore of the Silverhand tool tests. We have our Microns and Copic pens over this side, a white jelly roll. We have a Series 7 Sable number 3, which is what we're going to be using for the hair. We have nibs for most of the outline. I'm going to do an ink wash. We got some whiteout and some ink. And we're going to use all of our tools for this final tool test. But there is something I want to talk about, and that is if you have a character that you've been thinking about, that you want to make, sometimes it helps if you boost off of others artists to get an idea of what you're looking for. Like for example, because Lore is a Conan Wandering Warrior type, I would look at Conan Wandering Warrior archetypes, images, and sometimes you can even borrow or copy those ideas with your character and then take it to the next level. So I want to talk about, this is How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Stan Lee, John Buscema, whose art we did in a previous step. But one of the things I looked at was this pose of Captain America, when John Buscema was breaking down how the superhero figure is different than the normal human figure, more muscular, taller. I then used this as a jumping off point for Lore of the Silverhand. And so this is what I'm talking about. This is using existing artwork and then using that as a basis to expand upon. Right? So I have Lore here, same pose, figure. I was looking at the dimensions of this superhero pose, superhero figure for Lore of the Silverhand as an example, with his costuming and all of that. So that is using other art as a model to then expand upon for your own art. And that is what we have done here. And now it's time to get to inking. So first we're going to use this brush to do the hair, because I like to do natural forms with this brush. And then we'll do the outlines with nibs, and then we'll go from there. So let's go. All right, now to start off, I'm using this Sable number 7, well, Series 7 number 3 to ink the hair, because I like the flowing lines, and I thought the flowing lines would be nice for hair strands. And when I ink with a brush, I feel that there's a more natural flow, so I try to do natural objects, trees, plants, organic things with a brush, because I feel it meets that same feel. So now that we have the hair with the brush, now let's do this is a CrowQuill nib, GPen Nib. Let's do the form with this, detailing with this, before we switch to pens. So let's go. Now for inking, I'm using the nib, a CrowQuill, and for the CrowQuill, it feels to me just a little bit thicker than my GPen. So I like to do solid outlines, but with line weights on the outside of the body and other undersides of things, because to me it has a thicker feel. And a lot of times in art, you find your own method of doing things, and you usually follow a pattern, or you have some kind of a system for yourself. And that is, for me, making the structure of the body with this CrowQuill. So now we have the major forms in place. We're going to go in now with a GPen nib. Now I'm inking with a G pen, and a lot of things that you do in art can sometimes be based on vibes, right? For me, the vibe of this G pen is that it's thinner than my CrowQuill, so I can get nice fine lines. So I usually do a lot of the details of the face and head, creases of the body, folds, and the thinnest of lines is what I usually focus on when I use this G pen. All right, so now we have most of the figure in place. Now it's time for going back to this for the background, which is just equipment. Again, I have a pattern and a habit that first, once I have my figure in place, just how I want it, then I can focus on other bits. And so the other bits is this background, a limited background that I have just to punch up the character just a little bit for contrast and for interesting but to look at while also looking at the figure. Okay, we first started with the brush for the hair, then nibs, both the CrowQuill and the G pen for the outlines, the structure of the body, and now we're going to move to Microns and some Copics for the detailing. And once the structure is in place, then it's time for the fine detailing. And the fine detailing is mostly where I just get to have fun, because I have it mostly locked in place. You see what it is, you know what it is, and then you're just plussing it now. You're adding to, hopefully, you're adding to it in a way that makes it even more pleasing, but pretty much the stable base is there. It's like if you're making a house where the foundation, you have to have a good foundation, and then after that, you know, the lighting, it's not too troublesome or something like that. And here we have Laura the Silver Hand with the ink nibs, brush, pen, all of it done. And now this is where we are at right now. We did the outlining, structure, detailing. It's all here. And now let's move on to phase 2 of refinement. Okay, and so now we have all the lines done. We started with both a brush and some nibs to do the hair and the figure itself. Then we switched to pens to do the detailing. And now we're going to Inkwash. Inkwash with this is a synthetic brush. I've got my watered down inks over here. And let's get into it. This is first pass Inkwash. And so for the Inkwash, it's like painting for me, where I'm going over all the parts that I want to be off-white. And then after that, we'll build upon that with subsequent layers of ink washes. Now, not everyone does this. I find it enjoyable. It feels like painting to me, so I like doing it, so I will continue to do it. But some people have that skill where they can just do blacks and whites, hatching, cross-hatching, and make it look all nice and sleek and pretty. But for myself, I like Inkwash, so I will do Inkwash. And this is the first pass. And so that was the first round of Inkwash. We're going to let this dry and then tomorrow come back with rounds 2 and 3 before we start to get messy with some dark spot blacks and whatnot. All right, welcome back. So now we have our Inkwash layers down, and today we're going to do an Inkwash for the final time, but we're going to stain it with blacks and then start some solid blacks, spot blacks, to really punch this thing up. So I got my Inkwash, which is just a little bit of ink, a lot of water. But we're going to use this. Let's try not to spill any of this. Slightly diluted, but a lot more black than this. So we're going to do wet until wet. All right, we're going to wet this, pre-wet, and then stain with some dark black. Now I need to watch out so I'm not spilling any of this. Now what we're doing here is I've laid down some wet value, and then I'm staining in the darker blacks into the more mellow value. And this is where things get messy. I kind of like getting a bit messy with it. That's just me. I would not recommend this for newcomers because yeah, it can get, you have to be careful of where you're placing your values, and then where you are staining in the darker values into your already wet thing. And it, you know, the paper might not hold up as well if you're using lesser quality paper. Ink spills, splatters, it getting pretty much everywhere you don't want it to be. That is something that can happen. So I try to use this very sparingly, and I'm not always the best with being careful, but I like doing it, so I continue. And so this is what we have with the staining, right? You can see just a slight darker areas, some lighter areas where the value and the pooling of the dark blacks, which I just love to see. And also where there are areas of light and where the figure is being hit by light and other sides are not as lit, and darker areas. And then I can also touch up with pen and inks just to push it just a little bit further. But I like the look so far. There's a bit of randomness to it. I think that might be what I like also, is the random chaos of it all. All right, so now that we've done the ink wash with some staining in a dark black, but not true black, this is what we have, right? So his hair, you can see there's a transition from a lighter to darker in areas. And that is exactly what I wanted. You can also notice that on the pants where it's darker on the inside, but there's lighter here and lighter here. And then I can go in now with hatching and touch it up. And we can also do that with the rock texture, but I'm not too concerned about the rock. So let's get back to putting some spot blacks in before we try to do some detailing. So now it's time for some true blacks. I have my black Sumi ink, undiluted. And now we're gonna punch up some of these dark areas with some spot blacks. Now for this, I don't think I really need too much spot blacks, but just to make sure that I got my bases covered, everything that is black, you put that on just to give it just that little bit of extra push. And now it's time for detailing, where I use mostly pins now to get in some hatching, cross hatching. You'll see from the hair that we're gonna focus on bits and bobs around here. And I like how it came out, but we need some touch up. So that's what we'll be doing. So let's go. And now it's time for my favorite part, the final push. And this is detailing part 2, where everything is in place and now I'm just putting the final touches on it. The final detailing can take a while because you'll notice different things on different days, but as long as you get like the major parts in place, you should be fine. So I wanted to give some indication that his hair, the dreads and the shadows, and this is where I do the cross hatching, every little bit and bob that I can think of to go over just to put some tender love and care into it, to put some, you know, some extra thought into areas that I could have left, but hey, you know, while we're here, take a look at it and try to go that extra mile to make it look prettier. You know, it's all plussing from here. You've got the major bits, and now you're pushing things to the conclusion. So I'm knocking back the form of his leg, the highlight, as it were, to, you know, so that you can feel it, but you don't need to see it exactly, right? Sometimes the contrast is too stark, and so you want to knock things back or make it a mid-tone, just to, you know, knock it back a bit, make it not so glaring, so, you know, out there. But it's mostly on feel. Again, it's vibes. You do what you feel at the moment when you feel it to make it look nicer. And again, this isn't exactly needed always, but this is that time where it's like, oh yes, I'd like to touch this up and this up, and maybe connect this, and, you know, give this a little bit more texture and all of that. If you want to do it, now's the time to do it. And here it is, the final piece. And I could use a white jelly roll and some whiteout to cover up mistakes, but I think I am pretty happy with it. So let's recap first, and then we'll wrap this up. So we started with a natural brush, a sable, that's the hairs, Series 7 sable number 3 for the hair mostly. Then we did the structure of the figure of Lord of the Silver Hand with nibs, a CrowQuill and a GPen Nib. Then after that, we did some Inkwash to put in the values. I like putting in values. It's unnecessary for some, but I like doing it. Then there's Copic and Micron. And then we put in Copic and Micron pen work for the details and finer points. And that is how this was made. And that was Lore of the Silver Hand, week 4, testing the techniques with our tools. And in this one, we did everything. We threw just about everything at it. And I'd like to say I think I like it. I like it. I'm getting a much better feel for the tools and what they are capable of. And now I just need to refine by doing this over and over and over and over again until it feels natural, right? Right now, I'm still playing with it, but once it feels natural, then you're off to the races. You'll still add things, add techniques here and there from different sources. Whatever feels good for you, I say do it. And so that was Lore of the Silver Hand, week 4. And so that was the testing of our tools and techniques for inking of inking season using Lore of the Silver Hand, where we did inking with a brush, natural brush, some nibs, CrowQuill and GPen Nibs, Micron and Copic pens. We did some Inkwash. All I needed to do was correction fluid if I wanted to just touch up things, but I think it looks pretty good. So thank you for joining me. I have been Trey Hodges. You can find my work at treyhodges.com. Power to all the creators, and I will see you in next week's video. Take care and keep shining. Bye. Woo! Yeah! I'm hot.